Over the course of the last 3+ years, my label, the DFW Legacy Series, has released nearly 30 titles on vinyl for the very first time. I'm going to take you through the journey of our entire catalog on this episode of Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, a small chain of independent record shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you're not local, but you are in the U.S., you can shop online with us anytime at ntxvinyl.com. And of course, would love it if you'd subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Follow us across social media on Facebook and Instagram at NTX Vinyl is the handle. Here today to talk about my label, the DFW Legacy Series. Founded it with a few friends going back over 3 years now, and we've put out nearly 30 titles on vinyl for the very first time. It is a true labor of love working with these artists and these albums that really shaped our youth. When you're in your really formative years of high school and college, that music scene that you're involved in, or at least that we were involved in, really influenced us, not only musically but as people, and as our careers developed as people. And so it's been incredible to look back at these albums and rediscover the music and give them all a second life. Most of these albums are completely out of print on CD. They haven't been available in many years. Many of them are not available on streaming services. So this was a way for us to keep the music alive and add it to our collection. That was really the biggest driver. Lots of these albums, again, have never been released on vinyl. So it kind of got to the point where we're like, who else is going to do this? And we looked at ourselves and we started doing it. We figured out how to press records, how to get artwork solidified, how to manage test pressings, how to ship all these records out, of course. So it's been a really cool journey. I'm going to talk you through our entire catalog, tell you about each and every album, what's special about them, what's unique, tell you a little bit about the music, and obviously if you can still get them. So let's dive into the catalog. We're going to go through in chronological order as we have announced and released these titles. Let's kick it off right now, the entire catalog of the DFW Legacy Series. All right, this right here is where it all started. This is an actual vinyl PVC puck. Now it's obviously hardened because it's dry, but this is what created the first title in the DFW Legacy Series, which is an album called Colors by Miser. And you can see what it ended up looking like when we pressed it on a really cool kind of a purple and pink opaque vinyl. Really cool album. Was a great way for us to kick off the series. You'll notice the thread running through almost all of these albums is that we had personal connections with a lot of these bands. This one being one of those, of course, kicked off with some friends. And this is a great record. It got a lot of radio play. It originally came out in 2006. There is a cover of the Cranberries' Zombie on here. And just a great album. I would compare it to kind of like Incubus or 30 Seconds to Mars. Definitely kind of alternative modern rock type of sound. And it was the most important thing about this album is this was a huge learning curve. Again, figuring out how to press records, what is entailed. I remember initially we didn't get the audio right on the first version of this, had to go back, have it remastered. We learned that, you've got to remaster stuff for vinyl. It makes a big difference. So it was cool to kick this off when we announced this record. We didn't have any big grand plan of pressing records for 3+ years. We just knew we wanted to do one and figure it out and see how it would work. And this was a cool place to start. And it was really well received, which was exciting. Going back to mid 2020, I think, when we announced this first album. So Colors by Miser, still in print right now. You can still grab this, still have copies. Awesome record from a really cool band out of the Dallas area. Next on the list is an album called Lifter from a band called Edgewater. This was their sophomore record. This is the one that kind of propelled them to end up getting a deal with Wind Up Records. They did a lot of national touring alongside bands like Creed and things like that because Wind Up was really big back in the early 2000s. This is a really cool album that we pressed. I think it's the only one we've done on clear vinyl, which is really cool. We've tried to do different colors on every one of our pressings. Of course, it's starting to get more difficult now that we have almost 30 titles. They're also all limited edition. We normally press between 200 to 300. Some have been less than that. I think there's maybe only one or two that's been less than that, and then some have been more, but most of them are in that sweet spot of 200 to 300 records pressed. So all limited edition, all either hand numbered or machine numbered. Edgewater and Lifter, this was a very special project. Unfortunately, their lead vocalist Matt Mosman had passed away, so this was very much a tribute to him, and it was awesome to work with the band to again give this album a second life. And it was cool to reconnect with these guys. This is the band I played with a lot back in the day in my band, which I'll tell you about here in a little bit. But Lifter by Edgewater, really great record. Unfortunately, this one is now out of print. It has sold out. But to those who got it, I know they really, really appreciate this record, and so do I. Next on the list, Weightless by Slow Roosevelt. If you're into bands like Pantera and Filter and Stone Temple Pilots, this is a really heavy record along those veins. This is the band's third album. I'll tell you more about their other albums here as we get into the catalog. This one came on a translucent kind of blue smoke vinyl, which is really beautiful. Super strong record from a band that really should have been much, much bigger. I can say that for a lot of the artists on this list, honestly. Boys Lie, Girls Steal kicks off this album, a fantastic track. Incredible live band, really great people, awesome to work with them, and we're working our way through putting their whole catalog out, which is really exciting. So Weightless by Slow Roosevelt, this was the third release. Originally came out only independently, I believe in the US, and then they had to deal with Sony internationally. So they did get some exposure on this record, but unfortunately didn't last very long. But awesome record, definitely highly recommend checking it out if you're into heavy guitar music. Aquavita by Dusu was our fourth release in the DFW Legacy Series. We actually did two versions of this one. This version I have here, it's a double LP, came on a really beautiful opaque kind of blue swirl vinyl. We did a gatefold jacket for the first time on this one, which is really cool. Also numbered like all of our other copies. If you're into bands like Hum, Failure, maybe Jane's Addiction, A Perfect Circle, that type of stuff, this is a really great record. This was their second full length. Really good people in this band, like a lot of these bands I'm going to talk to you about. It has been amazing rediscovering these albums and giving new life to them. This is a band that I grew up on when I was in my teenage years and saw them a ton of times. And it's really cool. They're playing again now, which is awesome. There's been a couple instances where we've kind of been involved with these projects, and the bands have ended up kind of reuniting or getting back together, and it's great to see these guys playing again together in whatever form it may be, just to hear the songs again. So Aquavita by Dusu, really proud that we were able to bring this one to vinyl for the very first time. It took 5 releases, but you knew I wasn't going to wait too much longer to get to my own band. This is an album called Drama Kids by South FM, a band I was in from about 99 to 2006. As you can see, this is a signed version. We did do signed versions of lots of the earlier pressings. We've gotten away from it in later pressings just because it adds a whole nother complication. But it is cool to do. And this one, we got all the guys that played on this one, including myself. I'm right on the back here in the corner. You can kind of see me peeking out there. But this was an album that came out locally in 2002, and then we got signed to MCA Records and were able to release it nationally, which was really cool, and tour behind it. Drama Kids, we were kind of inspired by Radiohead, Tool, bands like that, kind of, again, alternative modern rock, but I think it holds up pretty well. Super proud of this album. And I remember back in the day when this was released by MCA, talking to our A&R rep about, you know, getting vinyl press, because of course it was only available on CD. And it was a very quick conversation in 2003. I promise you. He said pretty much at that point, the only artists that they even press records of were like their top tier artists. And so we were, you know, still an underground, pretty much undiscovered artist, even though we are on MCA. So there was no way we were getting this one on vinyl. So it was very exciting to be able to do it years later. Drama Kids by South FM, an album I'm super proud of. Glad to hold it in my hands. It was only fitting that the sixth release in the DFW Legacy Series would be the EP6 from the Nixons. Now, the Nixons actually began in Oklahoma City, but they really cut their teeth in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and developed an audience here. This was originally released way back in 1992. We pressed it on vinyl for the very first time. Beautiful translucent red with black smoke. This was an EP that came out long before the band really hit their stride. You may be familiar with a song called Sister that came out and was a huge hit for the band on their major label debut, which was also on MCA Records. So it was awesome to be able to do their early EP. This is the first release from the band. Great record. I would compare them to kind of like a Candlebox, a Pearl Jam, a Bush, a Seven Mary Three, very much steeped in kind of that early grunge sound. And this EP is a pretty good representation of that. The band really in their raw state. As you can see, we did signed copies of this one, which was really cool. So 6 by the Nixons, a really cool release that made a great addition to the catalog. Next on the list is an album called Artifacts, live at the Adventure Club with Josh. This has never existed until right here. Josh Venable, who at the time in the mid 90s going through the early 2000s was a radio DJ here in the Dallas area on the alternative rock station, and he ran a show called the Adventure Club, which was really critical for a lot of these local artists that I'm showing you here and many more to get exposure on the radio. So this is a compilation album where we went back and worked with Josh and pulled tons of the on-air performances. So most of them are acoustic, most of them are stripped down. Bands like Hagfish and Funland and Ben Queller and Old 97s and Chomsky and Isley, The Paper Chase, Radiant, Rocket Summer, Will Johnson, Slobberbone, and so many more. This was really fun to work on. Completely custom photography, a gatefold jacket on this one. Just a beautiful package that really kind of ties a bow on what the Adventure Club means and has meant all along for the Dallas music scene. So it was awesome to work with Josh Venable on this. Hopefully someday we'll put out a volume 2, would be really cool. But this is Artifacts live at the Adventure Club with Josh. This one unfortunately is sold out and out of print, but it's an awesome album and glad to have it as a part of the DFW Legacy Series. Next up is Welcoming Home the Astronauts from a band called Flickerstick. You may have heard the name Flickerstick. They were a big deal on a now defunct music channel called VH1, or at least defunct as far as actually playing music. But Flickerstick won a show called Bands on the Run back in the early 2000s that propelled them into national and international spotlight. Honestly, this was the debut that came out on Epic. It had never been released on vinyl until now. Came on a beautiful kind of translucent blue. We did 2 different slightly variations of that one on the double LP. The cool thing about this album was the band had not really spoken to each other and been engaged as a band in many years. This was the catalyst, and now they're actually back together and performing. The lineup's slightly different because times have changed, but if you want to hear these songs live, you can actually check this band out, which is an incredible thing that they're back and performing. A couple of the tracks on this were produced by Rick Beato. He talks about this album in a video he did about kind of undiscovered albums that he produced and worked on. Great band, alternative rock in the vein of kind of Jane's Addiction, I would say. Really more of a songwriting band, great guitar riffs, great hooks, and just a really great representation of the Dallas music scene in the early 2000s. This is an epic album. Welcoming Home the Astronauts from Flickerstick. Unfortunately, this pressing sold out immediately. We actually sold 600 copies of this. This is the largest pressing we've ever done, and the band has since now done, I think, 1 or 2 additional pressings that have sold out. So super engaged fan base and an awesome band, Flickerstick. All the hype that money can buy from Dolly Braid. This was a band that really cut their teeth a little north of the Dallas area in Denton, Texas, but they were big all across the region. This was, I think, their sole full-length album. We put it out on a 2 LP clear vinyl. Beautiful, beautiful kind of splatter. Tracks on this were also produced by Rick Beato, which is really cool. 2 in a row. Didn't mean to do that. But a great band that had a lot of hype, for lack of a better word. Kind of compare this. It's got some heaviness, almost some Rage Against the Machine vibe, that type of thing. Really cool album that, again, a band mostly undiscovered, but had a huge and loyal following. We did an anniversary show, the 1-year anniversary of the DFW Legacy Series, where these guys got back together for the first time in years. So again, another instance of the vinyl LP and the DFW Legacy Series kind of bringing a band back together to perform. They did a couple reunion shows around that time, which was really cool for the fans. So it was awesome to be able to bring this record to vinyl for the first time and to see the band reconvene. Portland by a band called 40%. A lot of crossover in this band. With my band, South FM, we were playing a lot of shows with these guys back then, and a lot of crossover with 40%, and the first title in the DFW Legacy Series, Miser. A lot of cross-pollination between members and things like that. This is a really great album. We pressed it on blue and white splatter, which is really, really cool. Kind of reminiscent of almost like a Third Eye Blind. Again, 30 Seconds to Mars, like I mentioned, a Miser. That's because the lead vocalist Coach has that type of kind of soaring vocal. So another great album, double LP, limited edition. Super excited to bring stuff like this. Mostly undiscovered unless you were a fan back in the day, but 40% is a great band, and Portland was a really solid album. There's a handful of albums in this catalog which I still to this day cannot believe I'm holding in my hands. This is one called Buick Men from a punk band, Hagfish. Incredible record. This is one of the first albums in the local scene that I remember getting on CD back in the day and really making an impact on me. The fact that we were able to press this on a beautiful orange and white split, just really, really cool. A couple of members from this band, Zach Blair, you may know because he's in a band called Rise Against, has been with Rise Against for many, many years. Also, his brother Donnie Blair is the bass player for Toadies. So just a really cool representation of the early music scene in Dallas-Fort Worth. Really creative band. If you're into early punk stuff like the Descendants, certainly the Ramones, all those types of like legit punk bands, Hagfish is in that same category as far as the early 90s Dallas scene. Really fun live band, great hooks, great songs, great energy. Buick Men by Hagfish, check it out. Unfortunately, this one's out of print, so you can't get the vinyl, but you can at least check out some of their stuff online. Probably the most unique album in our entire catalog, especially as it sits within it, is an album called Grown by the Coffee Nods. This is actually kind of a throwback hip-hop record. One of the only things we've done outside the rock genre. This is a really cool record. We pressed on blue and gold metallic vinyl. A really fun set, kind of reminiscent of like early Beastie Boys, Tribe Called Quest, stuff like that. The main songwriter here, Ben Rogers, is a radio personality here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so it was cool to be able to work with him to put out on a record that he had kind of written and produced and recorded himself many years earlier. So Grown by Coffee Nods, definitely a unique piece of the DFW Legacy Series catalog. There's a couple things that all these albums have in common. They're all limited edition. They're all rooted in Dallas-Fort Worth. They're all on colored vinyl. The main thing is that they are all in dedication to my good friend Tony Edwards, who passed away many years ago. This is, as you can see, a 7-inch, a 2-song 7-inch. On the back of all of these albums, they are dedicated to Tony and his memory. He passed away in April of 2020. Right before we began this project, and from the very early stages, we said, you know, the only thing this project is missing, this label is missing, is Tony, because he would have been there right alongside us. So it was an absolute honor to be able to press a couple songs that he wrote and recorded. He was mainly behind the scenes in the music industry, worked for independent labels, for major labels for years, and worked on a lot of these albums that I'm showcasing here today. So to be able to press something with his voice on it to keep his memory alive, something I'm super proud of. I miss him dearly, not only from a professional perspective, because he would have helped out so much in regards to the DFW Legacy Series and NTX Vinyl, but more so just as a friend. I traveled the world with this guy, and it was always a pleasure to be in his presence. So Tony Edwards, DFW Legacy Series is dedicated to him right there. And this is Disconnected in 73, Here With Me, and Turn, Tail, or Fight, the only 7-inch we've ever done. The next one on the list is super unique. I know you know this album. It's the Grease soundtrack, of course. But do you know Sandy Does Dallas? Probably not, unless you're from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This was an album of covers where a lot of these bands that I'm talking about here got together and covered the entire Grease soundtrack, but obviously it sounds nothing like the Grease soundtrack. Heavy versions of a lot of these songs from bands like Slow Roosevelt and Dusu, bands like Toadies, bands like Course of Empire, UFOFU, lots of great bands that we've worked with and hope to work with. This is a really cool double LP and just a really unique project. We pressed it on orange and red vinyl. It's the only one of ours that we've done, I believe, that has an Obi strip on it that's really nice. Plus you got John Travolta on the back there. So back in the day, this got a cease and desist when the CD came out from the local label that put this out, and we pressed a couple hundred copies and have flown under the radar, thankfully. So don't tell the John Travolta camp that we drew a mustache on him on the back there. So Sandy Does Dallas, a covers album of the Grease soundtrack. I bet you never heard of that one before. So I showed you an album called Aquavita from Dusu earlier. This was an EP from the same band called Quick Bionic Arms. This is a really cool EP. We pressed it on tricolor blue, green, and red. How cool is that? Really proud of this one. Added a couple of extra songs on this, including one of their key tracks called Bleeding Day, which has the full version on it that had never been released. So it was awesome to go back and work on this. It was a CD back in the day that stayed in my car endlessly. Absolutely great record, heavy hitting songs, great hooks. If you're not familiar with Dusu, I'd highly recommend checking them out. Quick Bionic Arms is a pretty good starting spot. Also announced at that same time, Starving Saint Nick from Slow Roosevelt. Again, we had Weightless earlier, which was their third record. Now we went back to the beginning, put out their debut. This one, again, another heavy-hitting record. We pressed it on kind of a wine-colored splatter vinyl, which is really cool. Just a great record. Really, I mentioned it earlier, Pantera, Filter, those types of bands. If you're into really heavy guitars, awesome album, phenomenal live band. So stoked to be able to work it on their entire catalog, and this again being their debut. This also features a brand new mix of the album, which was great because the original CD had been done so long ago. They went back and remixed it, and we were able to use that mix for this pressing, which was awesome. So Starving Saint Nick from Slow Roosevelt. Next up is an EP from a band called The Vanished. This is Act 1 Captives. This is actually unreleased material that never came out. They intended to release this back in the day. I think it was only pressed like on a limited CD, so it was never widely distributed. As you can see, it's a really cool kind of a whiskey smoke translucent vinyl. I would compare The Vanish to kind of like My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, that type of stuff. Really energetic rock, and this is another example of a band that hadn't performed live in years until we got them together to play one of our anniversary parties. So it was super cool to be able to reconnect with these guys. I played with them a ton back in the day, again, when I was in South of them, right around the same era. So Act 1 Captives, a really cool EP that we were proud to add to the catalog. Add this one to the list of albums I never thought I would hold in my hands. This is actually another EP, We Sing and Play, by a band called Baboon. Fantastic band. We pressed this one on silver vinyl to match the cover, which turned out really, really well. A great record reminiscent of kind of like a Pavement or the Stooges, or, you know, indie kind of noise rock, if you will. Awesome live band, and this is just a special EP within their catalog. They were actually signed to Wind Up Records as well, so they had a little bit of national exposure, and they've put out a bunch of albums, but this EP in particular was just one of my favorites. I'm hoping to work with them on more releases in the future, but until now, I'm just glad to have We Sing and Play in the catalog. A really cool EP from Baboon. Not actually a greatest hits album, but an album called Greatest Hits by the band Space Cadet. This is a really cool record. We did this one on clear and red split, which was awesome. Again, limited edition, numbered just like all of them. This is a band that's kind of pop punk-ish, but also alternative. You know, if you're into like Foo Fighters, Jimmy Eat World, that type of thing, you might dig Space Cadet. Just an awesome band. An album that came out, let's see, initially in 2003, and it features a really cool cover of Let's Go by the Cars, among just a great set of originals. So check out Space Cadet if you're not familiar. Their lead singer, Ted Levine, is actually still a very, very active musician, moved up to New York now and has a new band there. So check out Space Cadet and Ted. Young Bodies Heal Quickly, you know, from the Paper Chase. This is a hard one to put in a box, honestly. Genre-wise, Modest Mouse maybe, kind of some Explosions in the Sky, definitely experimental, definitely avant-garde. Lead vocalist and mastermind John Congleton is actually a Grammy award-winning producer in his own right, still to this day. So it was super cool to be able to go back and work with him on an album from one of his bands. We pressed this one on a silver opaque vinyl, double LP. Really cool project. Was excited to be able to bring this to life. Super unique album. And if you're into kind of, again, avant-garde, out there, rock and roll type stuff, this is a very cool record. Indie rock, certainly experimental, certainly, and a great addition to this catalog. Initiation by Course of Empire. Of all of the albums we're talking about, I love them all. Maybe most proud of this one. It's an album that really shaped me and my guitar playing a lot in the early days. This is a cool, clear, silver splatter vinyl. If you're into bands like Nine Inch Nails, Prong, Filter, Tool even, very industrial laden rock. This came out actually on Zoo Records around the same time as Undertow, and one of the reasons this album didn't hit real hard is because the label at that time really focused all of their efforts on Tool when MTV started dropping those videos. So unfortunately, Initiation did not get the due it was that it should have. Didn't get the respect, but man, what an incredible album. Was an amazing experience to be able to work on this, and all the profits from this album have gone to help their drummer out, who has fallen on some health issues in recent years. So has all gone to a great cause. This one, we still have copies of it left, but it's going out of print here pretty soon. Incredible album. Look this up, stream it if you want to test it out first. But man, incredible album, Initiation by Course of Empire. Here's one I never thought would happen, and that is the Funland Band from the band Funland. Really cool album. We did this one as a double LP on translucent green. It's a beautiful gatefold. Really cool record in the vein of bands like kind of Cheap Trick, The Replacements, stuff like that. Just, again, alternative rock, but really unique, definitely kind of a punk-laden vibe in there, at least from an inspiration standpoint. Members of this band, Will Johnson was on drums. He's known for being in Centromatic, also playing with Monsters of Folk, also playing with Jason Isbell. And then you have Clark Vogler, who is a long-time member of the Toadies. He joined the Toadies right after Funland Band split up. And Peter Schmidt went on to form, their lead vocalist and songwriter went on to form a band called Legendary Crystal Chandelier, amongst a couple other projects, and was really pinnacle in the early stages of of Dallas-Fort Worth music with a band called Three on a Hill. So a lot of history involved with Funland in this album, and it is a fantastic record. So check out the Funland band. This one's still available. So I talked about the Nixons and their EP6 that we put out pretty early on. This is an album, or an EP, I should say, or an LP, initially an EP. A band called Hover. It was initially called the Wheatland EP. Now it's called the Wheatland LP because we added demos to it to give it some more length. And this is the guys from the Nixons minus their lead singer, hooked up with a new lead singer and recorded this. This was their only output as a band, but it's a really, really cool representation. And this one came on clear with blue splatter. Great record. Hover, it's kind of hard to put them in a box, but again, alternative rock, stuff reminiscent of a band like the Nixons or Seether. Their drummer, John Humphrey, went on to be in not only South FM very temporarily, but then also the band Seether, he's still with to this day. So again, a cool piece of history, a very niche kind of record and one-off from a band that didn't last very long. But to those who know it, they really, really appreciate this record. And so was really glad to add it to the catalog. The next band we put out 2 records from, and actually they were new albums. So this is the first instance where we've done exclusive pressings of not necessarily an older album that's never been on vinyl, but an actual new album. So we got exclusive pressings of Blue October's Spinning the Truth Around Part 1 and Part 2, both on unique colored variants. And the reason why we did these is because, kind of like I mentioned, the Nixons were from Oklahoma City, but they cut their teeth in Dallas. Blue October was actually from the Houston, San Marcos area, but they got a ton of momentum in the Dallas-Fort Worth area back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it was only fitting that we would work with them and their label and their management to put out these 2 albums. Again, exclusive pressings only to the DFW Legacy Series. We did 300 copies of each. They did broader pressings on different variant colors, but it was cool to work with them. Both of these, I don't know if they're sold out completely, but they're very close to sold out. So it was cool to be able to work on new music. If you're not familiar with Blue October, they're an incredible live band, incredible recording artist that's been going for 20 plus years, still very active and on tour to this day. So check out Blue October. This is Spinning the Truth Around, parts 1 and 2. To the Quick by the Buck Pets. This is a really cool record from a band another one that could have been huge. We pressed this one on opaque purple vinyl, which is really beautiful. They put out, I think, 3 full-length albums in all. This was towards the tail end. They broke really early in the Dallas scene. Were one of the first bands to get signed to a major label and went on and played shows with Neil Young. They played shows with Smashing Pumpkins. It's those types of artists that they were inspired by and influenced by. This has got a very much an alternative sound, but it's kind of steeped in classic rock, honestly, kind of like The Who, Led Zeppelin, that type of stuff. But if you're into more modern alternative rock, the Buck Pets is a great band, and this is a great artist to check out. And again, one of those kind of earlier Dallas artists on the alternative front that were important to add to this catalog. Ugly Mustard, the only truly deluxe package we've done in the DFW Legacy Series. I say that because this is not only a gatefold double LP, but we did an expanded booklet. We did printed inner sleeves. It's on a beautiful, what we called mustard blend colored vinyl, which is really, really great. If you're into bands like Nine Inch Nails, Ministry, very heavy industrial infused rock, this is a cool one to check out. Super proud of it. It's been remastered for vinyl. It has extra tracks added on side D, which is really cool. It's cut at 45 RPM and sounds absolutely fantastic. Again, a very niche artist, but for those who love Ugly Mustard and know this album, this was their only full-length release. They were a huge band in Dallas and should have been huge everywhere, but just super proud to bring this to vinyl for the very first time. Last but certainly not least, and certainly not the last album we'll ever put out, but as the time of this video, is Love American Style by a band called Caulk. We did it on what we call bomb pop colored vinyl, which is a striped translucent blue, clear, and red, which is beautiful. Comes with a insert as well. Super proud of this one. If you're into bands, heavy rock like Melvins, early Nirvana and Soundgarden, that type of stuff, Helmet, Jesus Lizard, this is a fantastic record. This came out originally on One Ton Records, which a lot of these releases, probably at least 5 or 6 of them, originated on One Ton Records. They were kind of like if Dallas had a Sub Pop, that would have been One Ton, because they had a really great community built around their artists and played lots of showcases and really supported the scene. So Love American Style came out on One Ton, which was founded by their lead vocalist, Aiden Holt. So awesome record. Super proud to be able to bring this to vinyl for the first time. Songs like Little Man and Birthday Number 5, Winona, absolute classic tracks from a band that, again, should have been much bigger. But in the Dallas scene, again, if you know, you know, this was a really great record and a really great band. So Caulk finishes off the catalog after over 3 years and almost 30 titles. Super excited to bring this one to life. It has been a whirlwind pressing all of these albums. I can't tell you how much we have learned, and how much now we have it dialed in and know what we're doing, because after you do something 25, 30 times, you really know the ins and outs of it. So we have a laundry list of artists and albums that we still want to work on. I will tell you, all of these are limited edition. All of these are numbered. They will all eventually be sold out. But the people who are purchasing these and the people who appreciate them, they mean a lot to them. And that's why we're continuing to do this. Truth be told, we basically never made a dime off any of this. It has all been for the love of the music. It has been an absolute treat to be able to go back in time and experience these albums again and bring new life into them and being able to add them to the collection. It's just amazing. Again, albums that, again, can't really buy them on CD anymore. They're not, a lot of them aren't streaming. So this is a great way to preserve the music, to preserve a place and a time and a scene that was so critical to myself and to my partners at the label and to everyone else who supports what we're doing. So if you've supported the DFW Legacy Series, appreciate it. If you have no idea who any of these bands are and you've made it this far, I appreciate you for watching as well. But it's been really fun to look back through the catalog, and I'm hoping to do this again when we have 60 releases. So I'm going to keep on going. Tons more to do. Super excited to be able to work on all of these albums. So thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you again next time. My name is G.I. Sanders, and this has been Talking About Records.